On September 23rd, the year 2011, my husband and I went away on a weekend retreat. On that Saturday morning, we received a phone call. Hello, this is Marcy. Oh, hi, Nancy. Okay. All right. All right, give him a hug. All right, keep us posted. All right, thanks. Bye. Tom, Nancy was just calling and she said that Will fell and hit his head. They're going to take him to the doctor just to get him checked out, make sure everything's okay. To the doctor? They're taking him to the doctor and we're going to stay here? Should we go? No, I mean, kids fall every day. My kids have been hurt a million times. They're boys. They'll be fine. Okay. And then my phone rang again. Yes, this is Mrs. Rankin. Officer Bill. Oh. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, it's a 2-hour drive, but we'll be there as soon as we can. Thank you. Tom, Will's being taken to Riley Hospital for Children. We need to go now. So we packed our bags and left in the middle of this weekend away for a long 2-hour drive to Riley Hospital, not knowing what we would face. We picked up more details of the story as we talked to our friend where our boys had been staying. Our 6-year-old son, Will, and our 18-month-old, Dominic, were both staying with our friend Nancy. And Will is the one who fell. They said he was bouncing on an exercise ball, and the exercise ball was on a sofa. He was bouncing on the sofa, on the exercise ball, backing up to a railing that overlooked a 2-story foyer floor. Will bounced on the ball and launched himself over the railing, falling 14 feet. He landed 14 feet below on his head, on a laminate-covered concrete foyer floor. This wasn't an ordinary boo-boo that I could kiss and make all better. When was the last time you faced uncertainty? When everything you knew about your world, your life stopped. We were waiting in that waiting room for an hour and a half before this ever-present, incredibly meticulous nurse, Just Right Jen is what I'm going to call her, comes in and greets us. And she said, Mr. and Mrs. Rankin, I'd like to take you to your son. She walks us down this long, white, sterile, smells like alcohol hallway to the door of the room where my son was staying. And as we walked in, all we could see was a mess of wires, a ventilator mask covering our son's face, a neck brace, and his head was so swollen that our son was hardly recognizable. This was not the sweet little boy that we had left the day before. Will broke his skull, just his skull, across all 3 plates and had a 3-millimeter midline shift on his brain. He suffered from what is called a severe traumatic brain injury. And this is what we saw. Pretty quickly, the doctors placed our son into a medically induced coma. They wanted to make sure that the swelling on the brain could come down enough so that he could heal. The doctor said it takes about 24 to 36 hours for an injury like this, for the swelling to come down. And as we waited in that agonizing room, I remember sitting next to Will. Mommy's here. You're going to be okay. I don't know how I'm going to get through this. And our nurse just right, Jen, came in and she mentioned, Mrs. Rankin, there's something called Caring Bridge that many families will use to document what's going on with their child. They use it to keep everyone updated so they don't have to respond to text messages and emails and that sort of thing. That may be something you'd want to consider. And I did. I signed up for a Caring Bridge site right away and started journaling everything that was going on. I was beginning to share our story, share the story of my son, what had happened to him, and how we were trying to navigate everything that we were faced with. It ended up becoming therapeutic for me. And then something happened that I was not expecting. And that was everyone started to respond. People who were reading Will's posts started to respond to his story. As we were trying to navigate the emotions of the uncertainty, not knowing what tomorrow would hold, we were encouraged by people's prayers and thoughts and concern for us. People that I hadn't heard or talked to for years, complete strangers I'd never met and probably never will. As we were sitting there and we were journaling and trying to keep everyone updated and just making the most of every moment, I remember seeing some fluid coming from Will's nose. The nurse, just right, Jen, she's, by the way, the best type of nurse to have in a situation like this because she will not let any small detail be overlooked. She took a sample from the fluid and went off. Several minutes later, she came back and she looked at us and said, "Well, Mr. and Mrs. Rankin, we thought it was a problem, but it's not." Will had a runny nose, and I was a happy mama. You never know what you're going to be facing. But those days got long, and it was those first few days, I remember thinking that they seemed like months, not days. Time slowed down to such a finite amount of time. I remember the doctors told us that while we were waiting on the swelling to come down, they were preparing us that your son may not be the boy that you left the day before. This is pretty traumatic, and it's possible he will be different. There are no guarantees. Nice way of saying, we have no idea what to expect. So as Will began his recovery in his body, it took a total of 13 days. He was in that medicated coma for 13 total days. And as he began his recovery, he was like a 6-month-old in a 6-year-old's body. He had to relearn how to do everything over again. He had to learn how to breathe on his own, how to talk, how to eat, how to walk. And we shared every step with that Caring Bridge family, the ever-growing Caring Bridge family. And then we started getting more posts from Caring Bridge responses. I sign in hoping to think of something, anything to say, that might encourage your heart. And instead, I come away encouraged and strengthened for my day. Thank you for reminding me to love and not take any moment for granted. Your hope, Marcy and Tom, and your determination, little Will, has become a source of hydration to me, knowing especially where your help comes from to fuel the hope and progress. I drink in these posts. Now, the responses are not why I shared our story, but I was beginning to think that maybe there was something here. When we shared our story, when I shared our journey, lives were impacted in a positive way. We got to take Will home after 49 days. We were sent home with all kinds of extra equipment, which we were able to ship right back to the hospital after a few days. Will made miraculous progress. And we continued to share our story. We continued to share through Caring Bridge. And we learned that every time we were able to share his story, every time we shared something, thousands of people were inspired. Thousands of people started responding to us. And I'm here to tell you today that by sharing your story, you can make a difference.